In this episode,
she phoned me at home and I was making dinner and she goes, Shari, it's Helen. And I said, Helen, who? I did not expect her to call me. My other agents had never phoned me before. So she's calling, says, oh, we've got an offer. I tend to write the first drafts quite quickly. So it's all quite fresh in my head. So I didn't tell my husband what I was doing. I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. And I wrote The Couple Next Door in about 4 or 5 months. I like writing in secret.
I've worked in publishing. I've interviewed hundreds of authors now, and even the biggest bestsellers, they're all a bag of nerves.
We need to really work on our mindset all the time as authors, because the biggest thing I think that destroys authors' confidence is when you start to second guess and doubt yourself. As human beings, we're always going to have those doubts that come into play at any stage of our career. Even if you're the most successful author on the planet, it still happens.
I didn't know you could write a thriller with no idea where you're going, no idea who did the killing, no idea of plot, no idea of twist. I started The Couple Next Door. The only goal I set for myself was I wanted to be a page turner. So how do I do it?
Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to explore the inner game of writing and life and inspire you to start, finish and publish a best-selling book. My name is Mark DeVoe, and in this episode, we have Mark Stay back with us for an interview with the multi-million selling author Shari Lapena. But before we dive into that, I'd like to thank all of you, our family of Experiments and our wonderful patrons, subscribers and Academy members. And patron of the week this week is Connor O'Sullivan. Thank you so much, Connor, for subscribing and supporting this podcast. We also have a YouTube subscriber this week, as we have a YouTube channel as well, where you can get to see us doing all this live and direct on camera. And this week, our subscriber of the week is Leslie Chrislip Nilsson. So thanks very much, Leslie, for signing up on YouTube to watch these episodes. And finally, our Academy member of the week is the wonderful Jen Taylor-Gray. And Jen is our Academy member this week because she has put her dream declaration of finding her dream agent on the Academy. We do this with every single member who comes into the Academy. They have to say it out loud. What is the thing that they are focusing on at the next step in their writing journey? And for Jen, it's an agent. And so if you'd like to be like Connor, Leslie and Jen, you can join us as a patron, bestsellerexperiment.com/support. You can pop along to YouTube and just search for Bestseller Experiment. Or if you're interested in joining the Academy, go and check out all the information at academy.bestsellerexperiment.com. Now, Jen mentioned that she's looking for an agent, and I am in the process of doing the same thing right now for my nonfiction book, Passivida, Making Peace with Life, which I talked about a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. And I'm really excited to give you a little preview for next week, because next week's episode, we're going to have a 2-parter with a Manhattan agent, a book agent, where in week 2, I do a live pitch of my book to her, and it is absolutely fascinating to listen to. I've stuck my neck out, and as a crash test dummy and a guinea pig, I've tried to pitch my book idea, and the most incredible thing happens. So do join us next week for a 2-parter with Lucinda Halpern, a Manhattan agent who's represented some incredible authors. But let's dive into our interview today. And Mark Stay has interviewed Shari Lapena, who's the #1 international best-selling author of 7 suspense novels, including A Stranger in the House and the absolute phenomenal The Couple Next Door, which was Shari's debut. It was a runaway global bestseller, selling over 4 million copies worldwide. It was WHSmith Book of the Year in 2016, and it was the #1 adult fictional title in the UK for 2017. And all of Shari's novels have been either New York Times, UK Sunday Times, and Globe and Mail bestsellers. And her new page turner is called Everyone Here is Lying. So in this interview, Shari shares why you should try to write your first draft quickly, how most rewrites for all writers create a massive amount of insecurity, and the importance of a good title and the surprising places where they come from. And in an extended interview that we've got for all of our patrons and Academy members, Shari discusses her secret sauce for writing thrillers, where she talks about conflict hooks and more, how to write successful standalones, deep thinking about your book, and how multitasking can be your worst enemy. But most importantly, why you should finish your manuscript before the deadline. So let's dive in and listen to Mr. Stay chatting with the absolutely lovely and incredibly successful Shari Lapena.
Shari Lapena, welcome to the Bestseller Experiment. How are you today?
I'm good. It's nice here today.
Wonderful stuff. Well, let's talk about the new book, which is sounds so much fun. Everyone in this book, no one can be trusted. It's called Everyone Here Is Lying, which is a cracking title. Tell us about the book, and tell us about Stanhope, which is a safe neighborhood, a place for families, apparently.
Well, I don't think any place is really safe when you're in one of my books, but it's about this. I've made up this town, Stanhope. It's rough, it's roughly based on a town in upstate New York. And, it's a neighborhood where one thinks that they're, safe from violent crime and so on, but they're really not, because in my books, violent crime always happens within behind closed doors of, nice families. So it starts off with a doctor, Dr. Wooler, who is having an affair on his wife with a woman that he knows from work, and she dumps him, and he goes home in the middle of the day very upset that she's dumped him, and he finds his 9-year-old daughter at home unexpectedly, and his daughter Avery is a very challenging girl. Like, she's very bright, she's very manipulative, she's very challenging to raise. And he loses his temper and he smacks her really hard and knocks her to the floor. And then he feels horrified and he leaves. And a little while later, the family reports her missing. And of course, the suspicion immediately focuses on the father. But then as the investigation opens up, there are lots of questions that come up and various suspects. And what's interesting about this one is that everybody on the street sort of has something to hide, but they're all sort of volunteering information, and some of them are lying and some of them aren't. And it's quite a fun one to try and figure out what happened to Avery, because no one can be trusted in this book.
Exactly. You've got a street full of lies. It made me think of William Goldman, the great screenwriter. One of his books was called Which Lie Did I Tell?, which was referring to I think it was a film executive he was in a meeting with who just hung up the phone and said, which lie did I tell? When you've got a street full of people who are lying to each other, deceiving each other, all the secrets behind the white picket fence and the closed doors, how are you keeping track of the lies? Because famously, you're not plotting stuff out ahead. You're pantsing a lot of your novels. So how are you keeping track of all the different deceptions?
I've never had trouble keeping track of what's going on in each of my characters' heads. And I don't know why that is, because they're quite complicated. When I start to lose track is when I'm editing. And, when you move things around, then I have to really focus, and I have to have, timelines written out for myself to see, well, who did this when, and so on. But when I'm actually writing it, I have a really good grasp of where each person in the book is in terms of what they know, what they think, how they're feeling. It's only afterwards that I find it a bit confusing when I get all my editors involved and we're all talking about, maybe moving some structure around, then it gets a little confusing. But no, I get right into their heads, and I tend to write the first drafts quite quickly. So it's all quite fresh in my head, and I try never to take a lot of time off. So I keep up with it, because if I take a couple of weeks off, I got to go back and read it from the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. It's keeping those plates spinning, isn't it?
It is, exactly.
And when I think you've sort of tapped into something there when you said getting into their heads. Do you sort of get into character? I know you don't always write in the first person very often. You're kind of third person omniscient. But do you feel like when you're writing William, it's going to be different to when you're writing Avery? Are you sort of getting into different zones?
It's very different. I get into their heads. I think that's what I like the most about writing, to be honest, and that's why all my books I write from multiple points of view. And I do have my new book coming up. I do have a couple of first person points of view, but it's still me in their heads, doing it. I like to get into the different facets of the story. It's like, a diamond or something, and you're in this facet and you're looking in this way and everything's kind of flickering that way, and you're looking at it from a different point of view, and you're going to read something a different way. And for some reason, I don't really have any trouble getting into the mindset of the characters that I'm in. And I don't do any like woo-woo character acting, stuff. I just start writing, and I know I'm in that person's point of view, and then I just see it from their perspective. So that's what I enjoy doing.
Excellent. When you're writing Avery, who is a 9-year-old girl in an adult world, this isn't a children's book. She's living in a world where people are having affairs and there's all kinds of terrible things going on. What are the challenges of writing a character that young in that kind of world?
Well, I would say the challenge is getting the voice right for the age and the particular specific aspects of her character. So I have had some people say they thought she was way too adult or knowledgeable, or she seemed older than 9. I've had some people say that. Some people think she seems bang on for 9. I think it depends on what kids you've seen and so on. Some kids are pretty savvy at 9.
Yes,
but in a sort of, the thing about Avery is she's 9 years old, but she's very, very smart, and she's also quite manipulative, but she's also quite troubled, and she also she thinks she knows and understands more about the adult world than she does, because she's bright and she thinks she gets it all, but she doesn't really get it all. Like, she's missing stuff because she's 9. But she's got a sharp brain, and she's kind of good at reading people and manipulating them, but there is a lot of stuff she's missing. So, so if I could, the tricky thing with her was creating a character. I mean, I know a lot about challenging children. And I know a lot about the different things the different diagnoses children can have, ADHD and oppositional defiant disorder. I've seen it all through various people. So I know the ways that kids can behave, and nothing in this book is that far from the realm of things I have seen in my own life. And you're nodding along; you've seen it too.
Absolutely. I'm recalling my nephew had a birthday party once when he was about 8-9 years old, and you saw the whole range of children. There was one boy there. I was saying a very intelligent. He was talking about his Ben Sherman watch. He was very well dressed. He talked about precocious, and there were other kids there who could barely tie the shoelaces. So you've got everything in between. I think it's a terrific age, and Avery, I think, is. It's everyone will have your mileage may vary, but I think she is this kind of precocious child who thinks she knows it all, but clearly doesn't. And it's it rings very true to me. But it's it's terrific. It's terrific stuff.
And 9 is a very good age. It's a cusp age where some can be very, very aware and some are not. Like I think I started to become aware at 9. Really more aware, but I wasn't aware as I thought I was.
I think it's one of these things as well. It depends on the parents. I mean, if she's living in an environment where her father is doing duplicitous things and is lying and strikes her, then you do learn to grow up pretty quickly as well, don't you? It's and
you start to look at you look at your environment as not a safe place, and you start to think about how to protect yourself and all sorts of deflection activities and she's good at that. She's like playing one parent off against the other parent. And you see that all the time in kids younger than 9.
No question. Brilliant. Brilliant stuff. Wonderful.
She was fun.
Let's go back to where it all started, because your breakthrough book really was The Couple Next Door. But before that, there were a couple of novels, Things Go Flying and Happiness Economics. Let's talk about where they came from and why you veered away from that kind of, I guess you'd call it literary fiction, and that time in your life as well. So how did Things Go Flying come about?
Well, I'd always wanted to be a writer since I was a kid. And, I became a lawyer instead. And then I became a teacher because I didn't like being a lawyer. And I always wanted to be a writer, but I didn't think I could make a living at it. So I didn't pursue it. And, I started off, I wanted to write, but I didn't know what I wanted to write. So I just started, and I started with this character in Things Go Flying. And it was just a character study for me. And then things started to happen, and then more things started to happen. And then I had a whole book. So basically, I wrote that book from start to finish with no idea where it was going, no plot, because I thought it was literary fiction. It was a comedy. And I enjoyed writing it, and I thought, oh, this isn't bad. And I got an agent really quickly, and I sold it. And then I wrote another one, same thing. I just started it with a character idea, no idea where it was going to go, didn't care because it was literary fiction. Who cares about plot? No one really cares. And that was fine too. But I'd always liked thrillers the best. So that's what my interest. I love to read them. That's what I watch on TV. So I'd always wanted to write one. And when I was little, I wanted to write Nancy Drew books. That's what I grew up on. I thought I wanted to be Carolyn Keene. But I thought, because they were thrillers, I thought they had to have really clever plots. And I thought you had to figure all that out in advance. And I can't work that way. So I just thought, I'll never be able to write a thriller. And it took an agent to say to me, oh, it's too bad you can't. I wish you could write a thriller. And I said, yeah, me too. Because, I've always wanted to write one. And then I went home and in secret, I thought, I'm going to try it. And, I tried to plot stuff out and I can't. So I just thought, I'm just going to do a thriller the same way that I wrote my other books. And I didn't expect it to work. So I didn't tell my husband what I was doing. I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. And I wrote The Couple Next Door in about 4 or 5 months. And I just had fun with it. Nobody knew, because for me, that's very freeing. I like writing in secret. And I think, for me, certainly having people look at your stuff too early is not a good idea. So I read it over and I thought, oh, this isn't half bad. And I thought, I sent it to an agent and then, the rest is history. But I just surprised myself. I didn't know you could write a thriller with no idea where you're going, no idea who did the killing, no idea of plot, no idea of twists. But they do just come out unconsciously for me as I write. And now, of course, now that I know thriller writers, there's lots of them that do it that way. But when you're on the outside, it's so hard as a writer breaking in. You don't know anybody. You don't know how it works. Now, when you're a writer and you're in the fold sort of thing, you think, oh, this person doesn't plan either. And this person does. Yeah. I wish I'd known that you didn't have to plan a thriller. But anyway, I learned, and that's how I do it. So I tell everybody who wants to write a thriller and doesn't know how to plot, I go, don't worry about it. Just see if you can make it happen.
How are those first 2 books received? Did it live up to sort of your expectations of the dream of being a writer?
Well, it was funny. I'm a Canadian, and in Canada, we have a lot of small press publishers. And my agent said, it's a quiet Canadian book. And Canadians are quiet people. We tend to not think really big often. And so it went to a small Canadian press. And it sold a couple thousand copies, the first one. The second one did as well. And that in Canada is not bad. And the second one was shortlisted for the Stephen Leacock Award for Humor, which was good. But they never got outside of Canada. They never sold anywhere other than Canada. And they were healthy. But I didn't want to continue to write that kind of book and just be writing small, quiet Canadian novels for a very small Canadian audience, And so I thought I'll take a run at a thriller. And I was very surprised when my husband was very surprised. I was very surprised. I got a new agent who just does thrillers, and that book launched me. So it's been thrillers ever since.
Well, let's talk about The Couple Next Door, because I think it's sold something like 4 million copies worldwide. In the UK, it's WHSmith's Book of the Year. It was the #1 adult fiction title in the UK for 2017. I think everything you've written since has been a New York Times, UK Sunday Times, Globe and Mail bestsellers. I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah. It's you said you had a new agent there. Was it a question of just the agent kind of nurturing your ambition, or were you ambitious anyway? Did you think, okay, this is it, this is a big change?
But I don't think I was ambitious. I think I was a very underconfident writer, and I wanted to see if I could do it. It was an experiment for me. But I honestly, when my agent thought it was fabulous and said, "Oh, I'm going to take this to New York and sell it," I didn't believe her. And I've told this story before, where about a week after I met her, she went off to New York with a partial of the book, and then she phoned me at home. Stop me if you've heard this story. she phoned me at home and I was making dinner and she goes, Shari, it's Helen. And I said, Helen who? Because I did not expect her to call me. My other agents had never phoned me before. I'd never been phoned at home by my agents. So here she's calling, says, oh, we've got an offer or whatever. And I'm like, really? Because I honestly didn't expect it to happen, because my other agent had said, oh, we'll sell your Canadian novel in New York and everything. And I had just become quite jaded, I think, at that point. But the thriller world is different. It's different. If they like a thriller, things move quickly.
Yeah.
So it was just the ambition, I think, came after that book was written, because I like I said, I wrote that quietly, in secret, and I didn't expect it to do anything. And then when she got so excited about it, I thought, oh, and then when they started making offers and all the foreign stuff, I just got caught up and I thought, oh, this is amazing. And then I had to write a second one, and I completely I'm just curdled. I just thought, oh God, how am I going to do this? So I've never been an overconfident writer, and I'm not overly ambitious, I don't think. I just keep trying to write the best book I can this year. And I always worry that it's not going to be good enough. And, when a book first goes out, I'm always like, oh God, what if they don't like it? I mean, I'm not one of those overconfident type of writers. I mean, are there any? I think we all feel kind of insecure.
Yeah. I've worked in publishing. I've interviewed hundreds of authors now, and even the biggest bestsellers, they're all a bag of nerves, basically.
Yeah.
Shari, I really appreciate all the time you've given us today. What's coming next from you? I mean, it's been almost one book a year for running. So it's what?
Yeah.
Is that
so
still...
my eighth one is coming out next July. It's called What Have You Done? And it's set in Vermont this time. It's a rural location, and it's about a girl who's found dead in a field. And it's a nice, safe town, where nothing ever happens. But now something's happened, and it's going to change everything for everybody. And it's a little different. You'll see. I'm not going to say how it's a bit different, but there's a bit of a different perspective in this one. But again, it's multiple perspectives. It's fast paced. There's a lot of things, floating in the air, and some twists and things. And so that's out this July. And now I'm working on the draft of the one that's going to come out the year after that. So, yeah.
Fantastic. I love that title. What Have You Done? And Everyone Here Is Lying. Another great title. It's just so...
Both of those are from my British editor. She's amazing with titles.
Oh,
she
really?
came up with both of those. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I'm terrible at titles. I came up with The Couple Next Door, which apparently was a brilliant title. That's the only one I've ever come up with. The rest have all been my team, my editors, marketing people, whatever.
Excellent. Yeah. That's good. It's interesting because we were talking about this on our academy recently, where the thriller market is so competitive. And very often, I know authors might complain they don't get a say in the cover or sometimes the title and the blurb copy and all that kind of thing. But when it comes to it, thriller editors and marketers, they are pretty good at this stuff, actually, aren't they? They are very good at knowing what readers are looking for. And
I think they are pretty savvy. Yeah, I do. Yeah. And I think if you get a cover that you don't like, I mean, certainly for me, if I get a cover that I don't like, I do say, no, I don't like it. And they'll always, they'll rework it or whatever. Yeah. And titles are something we work on for months. Honestly, it's because one of the difficulties about titles is, a lot of them are taken. I'll come up with a great title and I'll Google it and I'll go, oh, there's 3 books with that title. Because, thriller titles have to be a certain type and they have to be not too long and they have to have certain elements. And there's only so many titles about murder. So it's hard. It's hard to come up with something, good. So yeah, I'm quite happy with my titles. They've been quite good.
Yeah. I remember when we spoke to Michael Connolly on here, he told us that he would Google a title like you just to make sure that it wasn't taken. But that again,
you have to.
Particularly with the self-publishing boom as well, it's really hard to find one that hasn't been snapped up. So
I know. Sometimes if we see something that's already been done, if it's a very different title, or if it's for kids, or if it's for a self-published thing that didn't sell or whatever, then we'll still do it. But typically, you want something that's quite original.
Yeah,
and of course, you want it to sound like one of your books, so you want your titles to sort of all sound in the same sort of vein as your other ones.
Yeah, no,
so it's tricky.
True.
It's tricky to come up with a title.
Well, they all sound great so far. So long may it continue. Shari, thank you so much for your time today, and hope to speak to you again soon. Take care.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book? Quitting the day job? Becoming a best-selling author? Since 2016, we've interviewed and studied the advice of over 500 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 1 billion books. And in the Bestseller Academy, we've incorporated powerful and proven strategies for success, inspiring fiction and non-fiction authors just like you to reach new heights and write their best book ever. Ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, coaching, and the most inspiring and exclusive community of like-minded writers? Well, your bestseller dreams are just a click away. Join us today at bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Wow, what an absolutely fascinating interview. And how nice is it to hear Mr. Stay's voice again. I know you'll all have missed him. But I found that interview fascinating, particularly what Shari said about how difficult it is for authors who are on their second, third, and fourth books. That it doesn't get necessarily any easier with the success of the books. And I think this is something really, really important for all of us to remember, that I think we think that once we get a successful book out there, that everything starts to fall into place and we don't doubt ourselves and we don't question how good our writing is. And we've heard this again and again on the podcast for many, many years now, that the process of writing gets easier because you know what to expect. You also know, if you finished your first book, that you've achieved that. You never have to question whether you're ever going to be able to finish a book again. As human beings, we're always going to have those doubts that come into play at any stage of our career. Even if you're the most successful author on the planet, it still happens. And so what it comes down to is it comes down to the mindset of how you deal with those things every time they come up, whether it's your first book or your eighth book. And so we need to really work on our mindset all the time as authors, because the biggest thing I think that destroys authors' confidence is when you start to second guess and doubt yourself. And that is part of the process, because we are always kind of running things inside our head. And it's very much a kind of a lonely process in that regard. But really, really do remember that the thing that we have to focus on is how we deal with those thoughts when they come in our head. If we've got a really great process to just observe them and say, yep, there it is again, there's that voice in my head, and not engage with it, not converse with it, and not, most importantly, start to believe it, then I think that will be removing one of the biggest challenges that we will have as authors. But it's also recognizing that this will always happen. It doesn't ever really go away. And so I think once we start to practice that more and more, and we actually see it for what it is, the whole process can get easier and easier with each book. And then, you know, we're not having to spend so much energy on dealing with all of those thoughts, and we can spend more of that energy putting that into our book. So thank you so much to Shari and Mark, of course, for that incredible interview. And like I say, next week, we're going to be talking to Manhattan book agent and literary agents. We haven't had one on for the show for quite a while, so I'm really looking forward to bringing that to you. But let's jump into this week's wins. And we have, as always, some amazing wins. Thank you to everyone who's been putting their wins on email to us or posting them on our wins forum in the Academy. And for the first off this week, I'd like to congratulate Zoe Richards, who I challenged a couple of months ago when we were doing a how to get quotes challenge in the Academy, for everyone to go out and see if they could actually reach out to authors that they knew or new authors that they admired to see if they could get quotes and endorsements for their new book. And well, Zoe went out of the gate like a bull in a china shop, and she came back and said, "Congratulations, I've got 2 endorsements." Absolutely amazing. But that was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. The update now is she has 17 endorsements for a new book. This is her debut novel that's coming out this year around the summer. So this just to inspire everyone. This is absolutely possible. If you actually go out there and ask people, it's surprising how many people will actually be delighted to endorse your book, give you a quote, you know, punt it out on Twitter, for example. She said, "This week is Ask for Endorsements Week, and I'm asking, but the response I'm getting is mind-blowing." So congratulations, Zoe. And this is all part of an incredible build that you're doing well in advance of the release date of your book, which is brilliant. So many people leave things so much to the last minute. But you should be starting this process long, long before the book is out. So I hope Zoe's actions inspire you to think about that yourselves. And our second win of the week is from Karen Story, who, as you might have heard previously and last year, had a number of short story wins. And out the gate in 2024 already, Karen said, "The London Independent Film and Story Awards have invited me to their anthology book launch, which takes place early next month, and I've been asked to read out the short story of mine that's included in the anthology. The launch takes place at a historic library in southwest London, which is actually streets away from where I used to live back in the 90s. So not only has Karen been invited to this amazing opportunity to read her book, but she's also going back to her digs from when she was younger. So congratulations. And these are some of the crazy things that can happen when you get in an anthology, you write a short story. You might just think of it as winning a competition or being shortlisted, but there are all these other things that happen in the back, such as these launch awards. So massive congratulations, Karen, and keep it up. And then our final win of the week is from Susie Edge. Susie Edge is someone that we've interviewed twice on the podcast. She's now one of our new coaches in the Bestseller Academy. And as you're probably aware, Susie has blown up on TikTok, 200 million views, 500,000 followers, 9 million likes. It's absolutely incredible what she's doing. But when we last interviewed Susie, I think about 3-4 months ago on the podcast, we talked about a 3-book deal that she has got from Hachette for 3 children's books, which are based around history, but also a really fantastic and interesting angle that kids are going to love. And her first book is brilliantly titled Pooh Through the Ages, and coming to a loo near you, they say. And Susie shared this with us on the Academy and the BXP team, that she has discovered that the actual book is getting an entire 1-page advert in the Bookseller magazine. Now that, for anyone who knows the Bookseller magazine, it's the trade publication where every single publisher and agent, every editor, that's the kind of go-to publication that they read. And so this is Susie's book being pitched to the industry before it's even out. And to just tell you how huge this is massive. This often doesn't happen, that they will take out a full page ad. That it shows just how much the publishers are behind this book, and they're talking about cutouts in stores. It's going to be I think possibly one of the most exciting book launches of this year. And I have predicted. Now I don't know if this is going to put too much pressure on it, but I predicted that this particular book, Pooh Through the Ages, because I think it's a fantastic kind of way of engaging kids to read, but it's also taken these incredible, like, historic kind of approaches, which have been really successful in the past. But I think it could be one of the biggest kids' books of the year. So I just want to wish Susie and all the team at the publishers as well all the best with that launch. And you heard it here, folks. I mean, this could be an absolutely massive book. So do look out for that, especially if you go for kids, because I know that's going to be a lot of fun. So, folks, thank you so much for joining me, Mark, and Shari today. And if you've enjoyed the music that you heard on the show, including the Bestseller Experiment theme, it's actually music that I've written. So you can check out the music project Urban Myth Club on Spotify. If you go along to urbanmythclub.com, you can also get links to other places where the music is. You can also watch a video of today's episode on YouTube if you go to @Bestseller Experiment. And find us on socials. We're on Facebook, Bestseller Experiment, and on X or Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Pinterest. You'll find us at Bestseller XP. And if you'd like to check out today's show notes, folks, the links are all at bestsellerexperiment.com. And whilst you're there, why not sign up to the newsletter? We've got a little link there on the top where you can click, and you can get weekly updates that come to you telling you all about the episode that week and the things that we've learned from it that you can learn as well. You can also drop me a note as well there by just clicking on the contact tab. And finally, if you want to get that book written, pop along to the 200wordchallenge.com and join thousands of other people who are building their daily writing habits. Can you win our first challenge of writing at least 200 words every day for the next 5 days? That's all we're going to ask this week. 5 days in a row. Can you do it? And I'll share a little really interesting tip about the 200 word challenge. It's not about writing exactly 200 words. Some people think, I find it really hard to get exactly 200. It's about writing at least 200 words. And what you'll find is if you get stuck into this, you will probably crush not only that 200, but quite a lot more. And there's going to be more coming about the reason why that happens. I'll be covering that in a future episode where we're going to discuss writing habits. We're going to discuss why the 200 word a day challenge works. There's so much incredible stuff going on behind that. And we're talking next week and in future weeks about some of the incredible accomplishments of people who've been starting the 200 word challenge and what they've achieved. So folks, have a brilliant writing week this week. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and Mark and Shari, and we really appreciate it. Until next time, it's a goodbye from Mark DeVoe, aka Bookmark. Goodbye.